Boys, I want to preface this video by saying that I am not the CEO of the Devil's Lettuce by any means, okay? I've not had like a very hard weed addiction ever. I've never been a pothead. With that said, I do have some cautionary tales to tell you guys, and by the end of this video, you should have a pretty solid understanding of how I have such an easy time saying no to weed, okay? And hopefully you pick up a few things along the way which allow you to make better decisions for your life as well. If you don't know, my name's Sam Harborne and I help young men out of the self-improvement trenches. And I spent a lot of time in the mental health trenches myself, so I was a bit of a late developer. A lot of guys are actually exposed to weed from as young as like 14 years old, which is insane. But for me, about 21 or 22 years old, because I had crippling social anxiety. I didn't really leave the house from the age of 16 to 22 years old. So I had just started to battle my depression, my social anxiety, and I started to make a few friends. Now, the problem is with these friends is that they were from my secondary school because I didn't yet understand how to make new friends. So I usually just reached out to someone who I went to school with, and these weren't the best friends ever, okay? I've talked about on my channel already the fact that a lot of my friends that I used to hang out with actually were doing hard drugs like ketamine, cocaine, MDMA. And I actually ended up going down that rabbit hole myself for 9 months or so, which was not good. One of the friends I met back up with during this time where I was trying to make friends was a massive pothead. I actually don't know if he's still a pothead now because I don't have any contact with him at all. Funnily enough, he blocked me on everything because I refused to borrow him money because I had already borrowed him money the week prior. So you can probably tell just from that the quality of friendship this was. I don't like borrowing people money because it gives me something else to think about, and that's not good, especially on such a regular basis. Anyway, we went round to his house to watch the UFC, and he also had weed because he was a massive pothead. This is the type of guy who was constantly smoking weed. Like, he wasn't really ever sober. But here's me trying to fit in, trying to make some friends, and I ended up smoking some Devil's Lettuce with him in his shed because we couldn't smoke it outside because he had neighbors or something, I don't know. This was just like the weed shed, and it was very nitty. We were sat in this dark shed, cluttered, full of stuff, smoking this weed, getting our fix. It felt very low quality, you know? The thing is with this weed, I barely felt any effects from it. I've never had that before when smoking weed, but I didn't feel shit. And I smoked the entire joint with my friend, and I just felt pretty normal. My assumption is because my friend smoked weed so often, his dealer would just give him the worst weed ever because he couldn't even tell the difference at that point because he was just constantly high or had mad brain fog anyway. So I ended up smoking this shitty weed, and I didn't really think much of it. I was like, okay, is this what weed's about? Is this what everyone's losing their minds over? Like, wow, okay, sure, weed's fine by my books. Didn't really make too much of a difference to me. Now, this is an issue because this made me overconfident with weed. And the next time I smoked weed was actually on New Year's, around New Year's. I can't remember what year, but I was spending New Year's with Hamza and a few of his friends in a hotel room in Birmingham. This was like a very degenerate New Year's. We went to a drum and bass rave. We drank a lot. We were drinking in the hotel room. It was off-duty New Year's, let's say. You know, we put our self-improvement to the side and we just decided to full send being degenerates. And I remember we went to this drum and bass rave and we left a little bit early, right? Around, I like how early for me leaving these raves is like 2:30 because I'm usually there until the very end because I just really like the music, to be honest. But we left early and we were walking back to our hotel, Birmingham, UK, 3 a.m. And the guys I was with were really keen on getting some weed because going out on a night out, having all of this massive dopamine surge, you're having such an amazing time. Smoking weed after an event like that can feel really chill. It takes you down a notch. You're chilling now and you're still having a good time. Because these environments and these events that you go to, they're so volatile that if you just leave and then do something as normal as going to bed without any sort of extra added dopamine to that, then it feels like a come down, you know, like, oh shit, the fun's over, man. Oh no. Oh, back to the fucking grind tomorrow. So you can take the edge off that a little bit by continuing to do a lower grade nitty activity, if that makes sense, and that's usually smoking weed. I know this sounds insane, and that's because it kind of is. Walking the streets of Birmingham, we don't have any weed. The guys I'm with are very keen to smoke some weed, so they're literally, bearing in mind that they're drunk, okay? They're stopping people in the street, anyone they see, and they're like, yo bro, you got any fucking loud for us, bro? You got any Zaza or whatever the fuck? And I'm just walking ahead, I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to just go to bed now. So I get into the hotel room and I'm ready to go to sleep, and then the guys come in, they found weed, and they're telling me like, yeah, we stopped this guy, this random guy, and he was smoking, and we asked him if he has any weed for us, and he did, and we bought it off him for £25 or whatever. I was like, okay, great, cool. I think they smoked it at that point. I just went to sleep. Woke up the next day though, and we had a bunch of weed, and we were on come down as well. So a come down is basically, you went on a night out, you have an awesome time, your dopamine explodes, you've released so much serotonin, you're having an amazing time, you're so well connected with everyone, I love everyone, oh man, it's such an amazing experience being in this club, I love you guys so much, man, whoa, you know, that type of shit. And then the next day, because you had such an amazing time, you just feel like shit, because it's like, oh, that's gone now, and oh, I'm back to the fucking normal grind set. Once again, perfect time to smoke some weed. So, we have this weed, we go downstairs from the hotel, because we can't smoke it in the hotel room, we're not that nitty. And there's this little park just across the way, so we go and sit there, and I think there's like 3 or 4 of us, and we've got this spliff, and we're just passing it around in a circle. You know how it goes, guys. And I'm smoking this, and Hamza's looking at me like, Sam, I'm really surprised that you're keeping up with us, because the guys I was with, they were the CEOs of weed. They had a massive period of time, specifically in university, where they would just smoke a fuck ton of weed, so they're more desensitized to it. Me, I've smoked it once before, and again, I have this mindset of like, yeah, it didn't do shit, man, like, whatever, man, like, no biggie. So I'm just smoking the fuck out of this weed, keeping up with the CEOs of weed around me, and they're like, okay, but I have this sense of false confidence, and I'm just rocking with it anyway, and that came to bite me in the ass big time, because when we went back to the hotel room, naturally we ordered pizza, because this is what potheads do, they just smoke weed and eat junk food. But for the entire time where we were waiting for this pizza to arrive, I was sat in the corner of the room just completely silent. I was just zoning out. According to everyone else, I was just chilling, right? But internally, my anxiety was going insane. I was losing my mind, because for some reason, you might find this funny, but it's not funny. I convinced myself, it kind of is funny, I convinced myself that the guys in the hotel room were trying to kill me. There was a plot to fucking murder me, hide the body, no one would ever find me. And these are my friends. But here I am in the corner of this hotel room, just freaking the fuck out internally. And I'm not showing it either to the other guys, because I'm convincing myself that they're gonna kill me. If I start freaking out, they're gonna just straight up kill me straight away. So this was a really weird mental battle that I was fighting on my own, because I didn't trust suddenly the people, the friends in the room with me, because this weed made me so paranoid. I wasn't ready for that weed. I was overconfident from the last time I smoked weed. I kept up with the CEOs of weed, and it was fucking me up, man. By the time the pizza arrived, I was so overwhelmed with anxiety. I took one bite of the pizza, and I felt like I didn't even have control of my hands. I was just like weirdly, like super conscious of how I was using my hands, and it was just so strange. And that just pushed me over the edge then. I became like very conscious, body conscious. And I just got up from the corner of the room, and I was like, guys, I'm gonna leave. And they were like, what the fuck? I think Hamza assumed that I was freaking out somehow, so he followed me down. He was like, okay, I'm gonna go with Sam and assumedly try and calm him down. And I remember being outside this hotel room. You can imagine this. I'm just like freaking out, pacing, like, whew. Hamza's in his hoodie, like kicking a wall, because he's probably just thinking like, man, I want to go upstairs and eat pizza, but I need to help my bro out here. So here I am. He's just like AFK kicking this wall to keep himself occupied. And he's just asking me like very basic questions. He's like, would it make sense for us to want to kill you, Sam? You know, and then he's like, giving me questions to just think through the scenarios, to piece it together myself. Like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Sam, you're just freaking out. You smoke too much weed. We did that for like 10, 15 minutes, got some fresh air, and then we were like, okay, let's go back up to the hotel room and eat our pizza. And I went back up. I was still a little bit anxious, but I felt a lot better, and then it started to like wean off. I got severely humbled by weed at that point. But the thing is, and what I want to highlight here as well, is that UK weed is terrible. Every single time I smoked any weed in the UK, I always had this weird underlying feeling of anxiety. And also, I always smoked weed around people who I wasn't 100% mask off chill with. With Hamza, I was, but his friends, I didn't know them that well. So for me to smoke weed and feel comfortable acting like a bit of a mong and a bit of a retard and being vulnerable, because it does make you vulnerable. To me, laughing uncontrollably and having a massive craving towards junk food doesn't really fit my self-identity. So when I am like that, I do feel vulnerable to any sort of conflicting energy, if that makes sense. So I always had this horrible underlying feeling of anxiety. And I think that's because in the UK, they literally spray weed with hairspray, chemicals. Sometimes it's laced with opioids. And that's just because it's not regulated. It's not legal in the UK, so any weed that you do get is grown illegally, which means they could do fucking anything with that weed. And oftentimes they do, because you can spray it with shit which makes it more valuable or seem more valuable, when in reality it actually just fucks the weed up, and it gives you mad anxiety when you smoke it. Like, imagine spraying hairspray on weed, and they do that, I think, to preserve it, but you're literally smoking the chemicals from hairspray. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And then on top of that is this underlying presence of casual sex, right? It's like the worst habit stack ever. You might habit stack things which are positive for your life. For example, you might sit down to eat food and you might habit stack watching a productive video like this while you eat your food. Good, you're learning, right? But weed and casual sex is like a negative habit stack. When you're meeting with a girl to just have sex, you almost need a reason to meet with them, which isn't just let's fuck. Because if you go to a girl and say, I'm gonna come around yours and we're gonna fuck, you're gonna make them feel like a slut. And that's not what you want, because then they're just gonna say, oh, no way, man, I'm not a slut, right? So you need to give them a reason for you to go around to theirs, which isn't just fucking. And this is some like sleazy red pill knowledge, okay, which I have the knowledge because I've hung out with a lot of guys who behave this way, and also I've done my fair share of studying of the red pill, and some of it's good. Some of the knowledge is good, like, yeah, guys, you should be a strong man, you should have a strong frame. But a lot of it's just garbage like this, like, yeah, you don't want to set off her slut radar by just saying to her, let's fuck. You need to give her a reason to allow you to go around to her house, which isn't fucking, otherwise she'll just tell you to fuck off. Whatever, right? This is common. If you said to any girl right now, I'm gonna come around to yours and we're gonna fuck, you would set off her slut radar. Even if she was objectively a massive slut and she just bangs everyone, she would just tell you to fuck off. So what you need is a reason to give her reasonable doubt that you're just going round there to fuck. And that's usually weed. Yeah, I'm gonna come around to yours and we're gonna smoke weed and chill, right? It's like, obviously you're gonna fuck. Obviously, but this is enough of a reason to give her reasonable doubt that you're just going around there to fuck her, because otherwise she'll feel like a slut. And I'll tell you a story about this. Oh man, it's not, I'm not proud of this at all. I'm not a casual sex guy, but there was a period of time where I was just down bad. I was super down bad. I think I had my heart broken and I was just angry and I wanted to just fuck as many women as I possibly could. So I was on Tinder and I matched with this girl. We chat a little bit, literally base level, you know, chit chat, like you know, a bit sexually charged. We know why I'm talking to her, do you know what I mean? It's not a secret. And it didn't take long to organize. I'm gonna come around yours and I'm gonna smoke some weed and we're gonna chill, you know, it's obviously, it's not that, but yeah, I like smoking weed. I'll come smoke weed with you, that'll be awesome, yeah. And I showed up to hers, never met her before, didn't take her on a date, nothing. Nothing at all. Literally Ubered to her house at like 11 p.m. I don't even remember her name. Don't remember her name. And that goes for pretty much every girl that I've ever slept with casually. I don't remember any of their names, really. I think I might remember like one or two. But that just goes to show how shallow this shit is. I go into her house and she's got the ultimate fuck pad setup. She's got her bed. Across, she's got a TV, which has Netflix already loaded on it. She's got a bunch of LED lights with all these sexy colors. You've got your reds and so on and so forth. And then she's got this weed as well. It's like, as soon as I walked in, I knew this was not her first rodeo. Do you know what I mean? Lying on her bed, I'm choosing a film because we're there to watch a film and chill and smoke weed, nothing else, right? And then she starts rolling the weed on my lap. She's like, oh, can I use your lap as a tray or whatever? And it's like, well, she could roll it anywhere else, obviously, but she just wants to be close to my fucking junk. Rolling it on my lap. And I'm just gonna spare you the rest of the details, okay? Like, we fucked, we had a little break, we watched some Netflix and chilled, and then we fucked again. Wow, amazing. And as soon as I finished the second time, she rolled over to the other side of her bed and she started to say like, oh, I'm so tired. Oh wow, I'm so tired after that. Wow. And obviously, if you're not a social autist, you can probably pick up the cue. The cue is like, oh, time to leave, bro. And it still blows my mind to this day. What does she gain from that? I gained the sexual gratification and the ego fulfillment of like, yeah, I just showed up to this girl's house and banged her and then I left. Yeah, you know. But like, what the fuck did she gain? I mean, I didn't receive negative reviews for my performance, let's say that, but that doesn't really mean that much to women. She could just use a fucking vibrator and have the same effect. And in the Uber back home, I was just thinking to myself, what the fuck was that? Like, I feel nothing. I'm never gonna see this girl ever again. And I did not message her ever again. This is the moment where I realized that this was just a very broken person who was supplementing her happiness and fulfillment with weed and these fake connections that she builds with men who she matches with on Tinder and they just come round to hers, fuck her, and then leave. Maybe sometimes she gets a message back from another guy who wants to go around and fuck her again, but it's just so shallow. Probably the most soulless fuck I've ever had. Man. That brings me to Thailand. If you guys don't know, weed in Thailand is legal. I could drive 2 minutes in any direction and I will find a weed shop. It's so popular here. Quite honestly, the Thailand weed is so fucking good in the sense of I never get any levels of anxiety. It's always a really good time. You get what you came for with the weed. You know, you get the munchies, you get really giggly. You have a great time, right? There's been times where I've smoked a fair bit of weed in Thailand. I usually have like this period of like a week or so where I just sort of go off the rails and smoke a bunch of weed. And this is usually environmental because me personally, I could very much so live without weed. I do not give a shit about weed, but if I'm hanging out with people who like their weed, I've found that I sometimes get roped into it, and it usually takes a week for me to realize this is becoming a bit of an issue now. I feel a bit shitty. I've not done as much work as I should. I'm going to stop now. And I'm very grateful for that feeling because a lot of people don't have that feeling. They just continually smoke weed, right? But during these times, smoking the weed, awesome time. The weed's amazing. And I'm watching South Park until 3 a.m., cry laughing, having such an amazing time, walking to 7-Eleven like 3 times in one night and just raiding the 7-Eleven for snacks because I get insane munchies when I smoke weed. Getting a bunch of crisps and sweeties and these toasties that I get as well. A lot of people like to hype them up like the Thailand 7-Eleven toasties, oh my god, they're so amazing. If you look at the label of those, it is full of preservatives and additives. It's genuinely disgusting. I can't eat them anymore, now I know what I know. Nevertheless, when I do smoke, I behave like this. I'm in a 7-Eleven at 3 a.m. giggling to myself over nothing because I've convinced myself that something is hilarious because I'm high as fuck. And I'm chowing down on all this junk food while watching South Park. My sleep is fucked. A lot of people like to say like, Sam, you smoke weed, you're gonna sleep like a baby, bro. Sure, but they don't understand that the weed is actually fucking up their deep sleep and their REM sleep. They're getting a bunch of sleep, but they're not getting the type of sleep which they need, which is why you probably wake up and you just still feel groggy despite sleeping for like 10 hours. The anxiety that I got while smoking weed in the UK is no longer an issue. The Thai weed is good, but the new issue is the hit to my self-image. I've created an alter ego version of myself, which is the closest I can sort of perceive to being James Bond-esque, Sam Harborne, Mr. Dependable. And whenever I feel myself derailing away from that ultimate self-image of myself, it's insanely painful for me, actually. So when I'm smoking this weed and I'm raiding the 7-Elevens and I'm laughing at shit which isn't even that funny, and I'm stuffing my face with junk food, preservative garbage, and I'm chewing the food and it's just becoming mush in my mouth. I'm not even enjoying the food. There's zero presence to me eating this food. I'm just eating it for the sake of it. I ask myself, is this what Mr. Dependable would be doing right now? 3 a.m., South Park, stuffing his face with preservative-filled toasties, being a monk. And the answer's no. Every time. Is he waking up the next morning at 11 a.m. still groggy and tired as fuck, surrounded by a bunch of snack bags, having no mental clarity, having to clean up the mess he made last night? Because you're sober at that point and you just look at the mess that you've made, the crisp packets everywhere, the crumbs, there's probably ash everywhere as well because you've been smoking the spliff like a fucking retard. And you just look at it and you have this massive hit to your self-image. How the fuck am I behaving this way when I'm trying to reach an idealized version of myself and I have a crushing understanding of the effects of compounding habits? There is a 0% chance that my James Bond-esque version of myself is rolling out of bed at 11 a.m. and waking up with no mental clarity, walking downstairs and seeing this fucking mess. I am so incredibly conscious of that because I'm incredibly conscious of the self-image that I've made. I've sat down and I can fully visualize myself being this James Bond, slick, hard-working man, God-fearing. I have a higher version of myself which I look up to, which I'm trying to reach. And that makes it so much easier for me to say no to smoking weed because it's very available here. I'm living the island boy life and that is notorious for being way too chill. And it kind of annoys me because I think a lot of people assume that because I live on an island, I am just chilling and I don't work hard, but I work incredibly hard, actually. Right behind me, I've got a whiteboard with my schedule on. 5 a.m. wake up, read for 30 minutes, deep work for 2 hours, eat my first meal, walk, deep work for another 2 hours. I'm literally on all day. I work. I'm not fucking around. I'm not smoking weed. I'm not going to the beach and chilling and fucking doing all this mental masturbatory bullshit because that's not what my higher version of myself does. And he certainly doesn't smoke weed. And I've programmed myself to the point where nothing at all is more important to me than reaching that level of self-image, because with that reaches the self-esteem. Because if I'm misaligned to that self-image, my self-esteem is going to take a hit. And this is usually why I get depressed, because I'm living misaligned with my vision, my purpose, my mission. And if you was to ask me, Sam, you can smoke weed, but you will become depressed, it's an obvious answer. The problem is, a lot of guys who smoke weed, they've not made this equation in their head because they don't have that clear pathway forward, that clear image that they want to reach. If you create that clear image, you'll find it becomes a lot easier to live aligned to it. If one does not know which port one is sailing to, no wind is favorable. I hope that was helpful, boys. If you want a new habit to form, which will change your life and earn you financial freedom, which isn't smoking weed, then you should check out my Academy of Excellence. It's the first link in the description. Take a look at the page and see if it's for you. You can learn how to make money online while traveling the world with your laptop, sustain your lifestyle in a place like Thailand, network with incredible influential people, and you can also use it as a perfect launch pad to launch your own personal brand in the future. I wouldn't recommend it to you if it wasn't a legitimately awesome product. As you can see on the screen, we're getting excellent results for my students inside of my Academy of Excellence. You could be next. Take care, boys.